What if I told you that the secrets of genetic engineering, something we consider a modern scientific marvel, might have been known thousands of years ago? Picture this: scientists today can edit DNA, create hybrid species, and even resurrect extinct creatures. Yet, buried within ancient Hindu texts are descriptions so precise, so eerily similar to modern biotechnology, that it makes you wonder, were these stories merely myths, or could they be forgotten records of advanced knowledge? The Mahabharata and the Puranas speak of beings with extraordinary abilities, creatures stitched together from different animals, and even humans conceived through methods that sound uncannily like in vitro fertilization. How is it possible that texts written millennia ago seem to echo the cutting-edge science of our time? This isn't just about coincidences. It's about unraveling a mystery that bridges the gap between mythology and reality. Imagine sages in ancient India describing the manipulation of life itself, crafting hybrids, selecting traits, and even altering the very building blocks of existence. The term genetic engineering didn't exist back then, but the concepts, they're there, hidden in plain sight. Take the story of the Kauravas, born from a single embryo divided into 100 parts, a process that mirrors modern cloning techniques. Or the Ashwini Kumaras, divine physicians who restored youth and vitality in ways that resemble regenerative medicine. These aren't just fantastical tales, they're puzzles waiting to be solved. So let's embark on a journey together, one where science and ancient wisdom collide. We'll dive deep into these texts, comparing their descriptions with today's breakthroughs in genetics. Could there be more to these stories than meets the eye? Were ancient civilizations privy to secrets we're only now rediscovering? By the end of this exploration, you might just find yourself looking at these ancient narratives in a whole new light, not as mere mythology, but as potential fragments of a lost scientific legacy. The answers lie in the details, and what we uncover might just change the way you see history itself. Ready to begin? Let's go. One of the most striking parallels between ancient Hindu texts and modern genetics lies in the concept of Sanjivani Vidya, literally, the science of revival. This wasn't just about healing wounds or curing diseases. It was about bringing the dead back to life, a feat that mirrors today's experiments in cellular regeneration and even de-extinction. In the Ramayana, the warrior Lakshmana falls in battle, and the sage Vishwamitra instructs Hanuman to retrieve the Sanjivani herb from a distant mountain. When applied, this herb doesn't just heal, it reanimates, restoring life to a lifeless body. Doesn't that sound eerily like modern stem cell therapy or CRISPR gene editing, where scientists can reprogram cells to repair or even regenerate damaged tissue? Then there's the Narayana Astra, a celestial weapon described in the Mahabharata. Unlike conventional weapons, this didn't just destroy, it targeted the very essence of life, disabling enemies by altering their biological functions. Some interpretations suggest it could induce paralysis, disrupt reproduction, or even rewrite genetic traits. Compare that to today's bioengineered weapons or gene drives, where specific DNA sequences can be designed to spread through populations, altering or eliminating traits in entire species. The ancient texts describe these tools as divine, but the underlying principles, precision, manipulation of life at its core, are unnervingly similar to what we now call synthetic biology. Even the process of creating life itself seems to have been explored in ways that defy simple mythology. The birth of Lord Ganesha, crafted from clay and brought to life by divine energy, echoes modern experiments in synthetic life forms, where scientists assemble artificial cells or even proto-organisms in labs. And let's not forget the stories of the Nagas, serpent-human hybrids, or the half-lion Narasimha, beings that blur the lines between species, much like today's transgenic organisms. Were these just imaginative tales, or could they be fragmented accounts of genetic experimentation lost to time? The Vedas and Puranas don't just describe these feats as miracles, they often frame them as sciences with detailed rituals, precise formulas, and even ethical debates. Take the concept of Kaya Kalpa, an ancient practice aimed at rejuvenating the body at the cellular level. Texts describe methods to reverse aging, repair organs, and extend lifespan, techniques that wouldn't be out of place in a modern biotech lab. Whether it's cloning, gene editing, or synthetic biology, the echoes are too persistent to dismiss as mere coincidence. So the question isn't just whether ancient Hindus knew about genetic engineering, it's how much they knew and why that knowledge vanished from mainstream history. The answers might be hidden not in the fantastical elements of these stories, but in the technical details we've overlooked for centuries. The Mahabharata's account of the Kauravas' birth isn't just a fantastical myth, it reads like a step-by-step manual for cloning, centuries before the concept entered modern science. Their mother, Gandhari, desired 100 sons, and the sage Vyasa orchestrated something extraordinary. He took the single embryo she carried, divided it into 100 identical parts, and placed each into a separate container filled with ghee. These fragments then grew into the 100 Kauravas, each sharing identical genetic traits. Strip away the ancient terminology, and this mirrors the somatic cell nuclear transfer used today, where a single donor nucleus is implanted into multiple egg cells to create genetically identical copies. What's startling isn't just the similarity, it's the specificity. The text describes the division of cellular material, the use of a nutrient-rich medium, ghee, in this case, acting like the culture fluids in modern labs, and even the gestation process occurring outside the womb. These details align uncomfortably well with contemporary cloning techniques. Take Dolly the sheep, the first mammal cloned in 1996. Scientists transferred the nucleus of a donor cell into an enucleated egg, then stimulated it to divide and grow. The Kauravas' story follows the same logic, just framed through the lens of ancient understanding. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. The Mahabharata doesn't treat this as a miraculous one-off event. It includes ethical debates about the process, with characters questioning whether creating life this way disrupts the natural order, a conversation that parallels today's controversies over cloning and genetic modification. When Vyasa warns that the Kauravas' unnatural birth might lead to destruction, it echoes modern concerns about unintended consequences in bioengineering. Could this be more than coincidence? Could it be a preserved record of ancient experimentation, repackaged as mythology after the knowledge was lost? The implications stretch beyond mere curiosity. If cloning was understood well enough to be described in such technical detail, what other genetic concepts might these texts hold? The Kauravas' story isn't an isolated anomaly. It's part of a broader pattern where Hindu scriptures depict life being manipulated at its most fundamental level. Whether it's the splitting of embryos or the creation of hybrid beings, these accounts challenge our assumptions about the limits of ancient science. They suggest a forgotten sophistication, a time when humanity might have peered into the building blocks of life and dared to rearrange them. Lord Ganesha's creation story might be one of the most compelling cases of ancient texts hinting at advanced biological manipulation. According to the Puranas, when the goddess Parvati crafted Ganesha from clay, she didn't just breathe life into him, she later had his head replaced after an accident. After Shiva, unaware Ganesha was Parvati's son, beheaded him in a moment of conflict, the gods rushed to find a replacement. They procured the head of an elephant, which Shiva then grafted onto Ganesha's body, restoring him to life. On the surface, it's a fantastical tale, but peel back the layers, and you'll find startling parallels to modern surgical and genetic techniques. Think about it, replacing one creature's head with another's isn't just a mythical feat. It's a procedure that mirrors today's organ transplants or even cross-species grafting. In modern medicine, surgeons routinely transplant organs between humans, and scientists are experimenting with xenotransplantation, where animal organs are adapted for human use. The story of Ganesha takes this a step further, suggesting not just transplantation but successful integration across species, something we're only beginning to explore with CRISPR and genetic engineering. Could this be an ancient metaphor for surgical grafting, or even an early understanding of biocompatibility? Then there's Shiva's role in the story. He isn't just a god performing a miracle, he's described with the precision of a skilled surgeon. The texts detail how he carefully attached the elephant's head, ensuring it fused seamlessly with Ganesha's body. This mirrors modern microsurgery, where blood vessels and nerves are reconnected to ensure functionality. Even the choice of an elephant's head is fascinating. Elephants are renowned for their intelligence and memory, traits that might symbolize enhanced capabilities post-transplant, much like how bioengineered organs today aim to improve rather than just restore function. But the implications go deeper than surgery. The narrative hints at genetic splicing, combining traits from different species to create something new. In labs, scientists now blend genes from disparate organisms, creating transgenic animals with hybrid characteristics. Ganesha, with his human body and elephant head, embodies this concept millennia before the term transgenic existed. And let's not overlook the symbolism of the materials used. Clay for the body, a substance often associated with malleability and creation, and the elephant head, a symbol of strength and wisdom. Together, they represent a deliberate fusion of traits, much like how genetic engineers select specific genes to cultivate desired qualities. What's even more provocative is how the story frames this act not as unnatural but as a divine science. The texts describe the process with ritualistic precision, emphasizing knowledge and technique over mere magic. This aligns with the Vedic tradition of viewing advanced practices, whether in medicine, astronomy, or metallurgy, as sciences granted by the gods. If we interpret these descriptions literally, they challenge our timeline of scientific progress, suggesting that ancient civilizations might have grasped concepts we consider modern. Or perhaps they're allegories, encoding lost knowledge in myth to preserve it across generations. Either way, Ganesha's story forces us to reconsider where the line between mythology and forgotten science truly lies. So was Ganesha's head replacement a divine miracle, or could it be a fragmented memory of biological experimentation? The details are too precise to dismiss as pure imagination. From surgical grafting to genetic hybrids, the story resonates with cutting-edge science in ways that defy coincidence. It invites us to ask not just how these ideas appeared in ancient texts, but why, and what other secrets might still be hidden in these age-old narratives waiting to be decoded. Among the most fascinating figures in Vedic lore are the Ashwini Kumaras, the divine twin physicians whose feats of healing and regeneration sound like something straight out of a modern biotech lab. Described in the Rigveda as radiant, golden-haired gods who ride a chariot drawn by horses, they weren't just healers. They were pioneers of what we might now call regenerative medicine. One hymn recounts how they restored a sage's severed leg, replacing it with an iron prosthesis that functioned perfectly. Another tells of them reviving a decrepit old man, transforming him into a youthful, vigorous version of himself. These aren't just miracles, they're procedures that eerily parallel today's breakthroughs in stem cell therapy and tissue engineering. Take the story of Chayavana, a sage aged beyond recognition, his body withered by time. The Ashwini Kumaras didn't just give him a temporary fix, they concocted a rejuvenating elixir that restored his vitality at the cellular level, turning back the clock on his aging process. Compare that to modern research into telomere extension or senolytic therapies, where scientists target the mechanisms of aging to reverse its effects. The elixir's description, a blend of rare herbs and divine techniques, mirrors the complex biochemical cocktails used today to stimulate cellular regeneration. Even the iron leg replacement resembles cutting-edge bionics, where prosthetics integrate seamlessly with living tissue, blurring the line between organic and artificial. But what's truly remarkable is how the Rig Veda frames these acts. The hymns don't describe them as supernatural events but as scientific achievements, detailing methods and ingredients. One passage mentions the twins using soma, a sacred plant, to enhance their remedies, a detail that aligns with modern ethnobotany, where researchers study ancient plants for their regenerative properties. Another highlights their ability to reknit bones and nerves, a process that sounds strikingly like stem cell differentiation, where undifferentiated cells are guided to repair specific tissues. The Ashwini Kumaras didn't stop at physical repairs. They were said to cure blindness, repair organs, and even prevent miscarriage, feats that hint at an understanding of embryology and genetic disorders. In one account, they intervened to ensure a child was born healthy despite a curse that should have doomed it, a scenario reminiscent of modern gene editing to correct hereditary conditions. Their work wasn't just about fixing what was broken, it was about optimizing life, a principle at the heart of today's genetic engineering. So were the Ashwini Kumaras merely mythic symbols, or could their stories encode forgotten knowledge of advanced biological science? The precision in their methods, the focus on cellular and structural repair, and the emphasis on rejuvenation all point to something deeper than allegory. Whether these tales preserve fragments of an ancient scientific tradition or simply reveal the timeless human fascination with overcoming bodily limits, one thing is clear: the line between their divine interventions and our modern medical marvels is thinner than we might think. And that raises a tantalizing question. If they could achieve such feats millennia ago, what might we rediscover if we read these texts not as myths but as manuals? The story of Lord Kartikya's birth isn't just a tale of divine intervention, it reads like an ancient blueprint for assisted reproductive technology. According to the Puranas, Kartikya was conceived when the god Agni, representing fire, carried the seed of Shiva to the goddess Ganga, who then nurtured it in her waters before transferring it to the 6 Kritikas or Pleiades for final incubation. Break this down and you'll find uncanny parallels to modern in vitro fertilization. The collection of genetic material outside the body, its preservation in a nurturing medium, and implantation into surrogate carriers. This wasn't just mythology, it was a step-by-step process mirroring the very techniques we use today to create life in labs. Take the role of Agni, the divine intermediary who transported Shiva's seed. In Eve, sperm is often collected and transported under controlled conditions to ensure viability, much like Agni safeguarding the sacred material. Then there's Ganga, symbolizing the life-giving properties of water, which served as the nurturing environment for the embryo. This mirrors the culture fluids in IVF labs, where embryos are developed before transfer. Even the number of surrogates, the 6 Kritikas, hints at a sophisticated understanding of divided gestation, akin to modern practices where embryos may be split or shared among multiple carriers. But the details go deeper. The texts describe the Kritikas as nourishing the embryo in shifts, each contributing to its growth. This aligns strikingly with contemporary gestational surrogacy, where a host womb provides the environment for development without contributing genetic material. The result, Kartikya, a child with 6 mothers yet genetically linked to Shiva and Parvati, a scenario indistinguishable from today's blended surrogacy and donor conception. What's most compelling isn't just the similarity, it's the reverence for the science behind it. The Puranas frame Kartikya's birth not as a miracle but as a deliberate, orchestrated process, complete with specialized roles and stages. Compare that to the first successful IVF birth in 1978, where Louise Brown was famously dubbed a test tube baby. The ancient texts, however, lack our technological jargon. They describe these feats through the lens of their time, using symbols like fire and water to represent the tools of conception. Could this be evidence of lost reproductive science or simply a poetic coincidence? The precision in the narrative, the roles, the stages, the outcome, suggests more than imagination. Even the symbolism holds up under scrutiny. Fire, Agni, as the spark of life, water, Ganga, as the nurturing medium, and the Kritikas as the vessels of growth. It's a trifecta of elements still central to fertility treatments today. Whether myth or encoded knowledge, Kartikya's story forces us to reconsider how ancient civilizations might have understood, and perhaps even manipulated, the very origins of life. The Sanjivani herb from the Ramayana isn't just a plot device, it's a biological mystery wrapped in myth. When Lakshmana lay dying on the battlefield, struck by a deadly arrow, the herb didn't just heal his wounds, it reignited life itself. Modern science might call this cellular reprogramming or gene therapy, where damaged DNA is edited to restore function. The parallels are too precise to ignore. Descriptions of the herb's effects: rapid tissue regeneration, reversal of fatal injuries, mirror today's CRISPR experiments, where scientists splice genes to repair or replace faulty sequences. But here's what's even more intriguing: the herb wasn't plucked from thin air. It grew in the Himalayas, a region we now know harbors plants with extraordinary medicinal properties, some of which are still being studied for their regenerative potential. Take Rhodiola rosea, a Himalayan plant shown to enhance cellular repair and extend lifespan in lab studies, or ashwagandha, an ancient adaptogen with proven anti-inflammatory and neuroprotective effects. These aren't just herbs, they're natural biohacks capable of influencing gene expression much like the Sanjivani was said to do. Research into their compounds, like with analytes in ashwagandha, reveals they can activate stress response pathways, effectively telling cells to repair themselves. Sound familiar? It's the same principle behind cutting-edge gene therapies, where molecular instructions are delivered to cells to trigger healing. The Ramayana might frame it as divine magic, but the mechanism aligns uncomfortably well with 21st century science. Then there's the method of retrieval. Hanuman didn't just find the herb, he uprooted the entire mountain because he couldn't identify it, a detail that hints at something profound. The text implies the herb wasn't common knowledge, its use required specialized understanding. This mirrors modern bioprospecting, where scientists scour biodiverse regions like the Himalayas for rare species with unique genetic traits. The difference: today, we're isolating genes from extremophiles or deep-sea organisms to engineer new therapies. Back then, the knowledge might have been encoded in myth to preserve it. But the real question isn't whether the Sanjivani herb existed as described. It's why this narrative, among countless others, fixates on the manipulation of life at its most fundamental level. The Ramayana isn't alone. Global myths from the Egyptian elixir of life to the Greek ambrosia echo this theme, yet Hindu texts stand apart for their technicality. The Sanjivani isn't just a cure-all, it's a targeted intervention used only when other remedies fail, much like how gene therapy is reserved for otherwise untreatable conditions. Could these stories be remnants of an ancient biotech tradition lost to time? Himalayan flora alone contains over 10,000 species with undocumented medicinal properties. We're only beginning to scratch the surface of their potential, from anti-cancer compounds to longevity enhancers. Meanwhile, the Sanjivani's legacy endures not as fantasy but as a challenge. If our ancestors glimpsed these possibilities millennia ago, what else might they have known? The answers could lie not in dismissing these accounts as mere legend, but in reading them as coded guides to a science we're only now relearning. Vishnu's 10 avatars, known as the Dashavatara, present a sequence so strikingly aligned with the stages of evolution that it's impossible to dismiss as mere coincidence. The first incarnation, Matsya, emerges as a fish, a perfect parallel to life's aquatic origins. Next comes Kurma, the tortoise, symbolizing the transition to amphibians. Varaha, the boar, follows, reflecting early land mammals, while Narasimha, the half-lion being, bridges the gap between animal and human traits. Vamana, the dwarf, hints at early hominids, and Parashurama, the axe-wielding hermit, mirrors the dawn of tool-using humans. Rama represents the ideal civilized man, Krishna the enlightened thinker, and Kalki, the final avatar, embodies humanity's future potential. This isn't just mythic storytelling, it's a step-by-step chronicle of life's progression, matching Darwin's theory millennia before On the Origin of Species was written. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. The sequence isn't just broadly evolutionary, it's eerily precise in its biological timing. Matsya appears during a great flood, echoing the primordial soup theory where life began in water. Kurma's role in churning the cosmic ocean mirrors the tectonic shifts that allowed species to crawl onto land. Varaha's emergence to lift the earth from watery depths aligns with the rise of megafauna. Each avatar's arrival coincides with an environmental or societal shift, much like how evolutionary leaps respond to ecological pressures. The Ramayana even describes Narasimha as a transitional form, neither fully beast nor man, a concept that wouldn't be formalized until Darwin's work on intermediate species. The debate isn't just about whether ancient seers intuited evolution, it's about how they framed it. Hindu cosmology speaks of yugas, cyclical ages where consciousness and form evolve together, a concept that parallels punctuated equilibrium in modern evolutionary biology. The texts don't present the avatars as random acts of divinity, but as deliberate interventions timed to humanity's developmental stages. Kalki, the final avatar, rides a white horse and wields a flaming sword, symbolizing not just an end but a transcendence, much like transhumanist visions of genetic or cybernetic ascension. Critics argue this is retroactive pattern matching, imposing modern science onto metaphor. Yet the texts themselves hint at deeper knowledge. The Vishnu Purana describes Matsya's fins with anatomical precision, Kurma's shell with structural detail, and Narasimha's hybrid physiology in ways that go beyond poetic license. Even the Bhagavata Purana notes that each avatar manifests according to the needs of the age, a phrase that resonates with adaptive radiation in evolutionary biology. So is the Dashavatara evidence of ancient evolutionary theory, or a prophetic allegory waiting for science to catch up? The answer might lie in how we define knowledge. These stories weren't written as textbooks but as narratives encoding observations about life's transformations. Whether through divine insight or empirical observation, the sages who composed them captured a truth about life's unfolding, one that science would later validate in a different language. The avatars don't just recount evolution, they contextualize it within a cosmic narrative, bridging the material and the spiritual in a way that challenges us to see Darwinism not as a disruption of tradition, but as its unexpected confirmation. The Nagas of Hindu mythology aren't just fantastical creatures, they're a genetic puzzle. These serpent-human hybrids described across texts like the Mahabharata and Puranas blur biological boundaries in ways that defy simple myth-making. Take Ulupi, the Naga princess who marries the warrior Arjuna. She's not some monstrous anomaly but a fully realized being, human above the waist, serpent below, with intelligence, culture, and even advanced knowledge of medicine. This isn't just imaginative storytelling, it's a detailed portrayal of a hybrid species, one that resonates unsettlingly with modern chimeric experiments. Consider how scientists today splice genes from different organisms, creating transgenic animals like glow-in-the-dark mice with jellyfish DNA or goats that produce spider silk in their milk. The Naga's physiology, part human, part reptile, mirrors these lab-engineered chimeras. But here's what's provocative. Ancient texts describe the Nagas as a distinct race, complete with societal structures and specialized abilities. Ulupi, for instance, possesses knowledge of rare medicinal herbs and rejuvenation techniques, much like the Ashwini Kumaras. This suggests not random hybridization but deliberate, functional design, an ancient parallel to today's synthetic biology where traits are selected for specific purposes. The Mahabharata adds another layer. It describes Nagas as both terrestrial and aquatic, capable of thriving in multiple environments. Modern geneticists engineer similar adaptability, like creating crops resistant to drought or salinity. Even the Naga's alleged immortality through a ritual called Nagamani echoes research into telomere extension and biological age reversal. Coincidence? Perhaps, but when multiple accounts from disparate texts converge on such precise details, it's worth asking whether these stories encode fragmented memories of genetic tinkering. Then there's the symbolism. Serpents in Hinduism represent Kundalini energy, a coiled potential at the base of the spine, a metaphor that aligns oddly well with DNA's double helix. The Naga's hybrid form could symbolize the fusion of primal instinct serpent and higher cognition human, much like how CRISPR edits aim to enhance natural traits. Even their subterranean cities, described as hidden and technologically advanced, parallel modern labs where sensitive genetic work occurs away from public scrutiny. So were the Nagas mere myth, or could they represent a lost chapter in humanity's bioengineering history? Unlike dragons or mermaids, their depictions are strikingly consistent and integrated into Hindu cosmology as real, if rare, beings. Whether symbolic or literal, their stories challenge us to reconsider how ancient cultures might have conceptualized, or even practiced, the blending of life's building blocks long before we coined the term transgenic. Rishi Bharadwaj's Vimana Shastra doesn't just describe flying machines. It details weapons so advanced they sound like something ripped from a modern biotech lab. The text mentions the Brahmastra, a celestial weapon capable of rendering entire populations sterile, an effect chillingly similar to ionizing radiation or CRISPR-based gene drives designed to suppress fertility in target species. But the Vimana Shastra goes further, describing how these weapons could be deployed from aerial vehicles, Vimanas, spreading their effects over vast areas like some ancient precursor to biological warfare. Consider the parallels. Today, we have airborne delivery systems for insecticides or even experimental gene editing sprays meant to alter mosquito populations. The Brahmastras described impact causing infertility without immediate physical destruction, mirrors modern concerns about epigenetic weapons, where silent, undetectable changes could rewrite genetic expression across generations. The text even warns of collateral damage, noting how the weapon's effects could persist in the environment, contaminating land and water. This isn't just mythic hyperbole. It's a disturbingly accurate depiction of how radiation or persistent bioagents behave. Then there's the Agnyastra, another weapon from the Vimana Shastra, said to ignite uncontrollable fires that burn even underwater. While this sounds fantastical, compare it to modern thermobaric weapons or even phosphorus munition substances that defy conventional extinguishing methods. The text's emphasis on the Agnyastra's chemical properties rather than divine power suggests an understanding of combustion science far ahead of its time. But the most startling detail lies in the Vimana Shastra's procedural rigor. It doesn't just list these weapons, it outlines their construction, deployment protocols, and even countermeasures. One passage describes protective suits and insulated chambers to shield operators from the Brahmastra's effects, akin to modern hazmat gear or radiation shielding. Another details how to neutralize contamination methods involving specific herbs and minerals that, intriguingly, align with today's research into natural radioprotective agents like spirulina or ashwagandha. What's unsettling isn't just the technological foresight but the ethical framework. The text repeatedly cautions against misuse, framing these weapons as last resorts with catastrophic karmic consequences. This mirrors contemporary debates over gene drives and autonomous weapons, where scientists grapple with the same moral dilemmas. Were these warnings born of hypothetical speculation, or could they reflect a lost civilization's hard-learned lessons? The Vimana Shastra forces us to confront a provocative possibility that ancient cultures might have understood, and perhaps even wielded, the power to manipulate life and environment at a molecular level. Whether these accounts preserve fragmented memories of advanced science or simply reveal humanity's timeless fascination with destructive potential, one thing is clear: the line between myth and lost knowledge is far thinner than we've been taught to believe. The story of Kacha and Devayani in the Mahabharata isn't just a dramatic tale of betrayal and resurrection, it's a cryptic lesson in biological data storage. When Kacha, sent to learn the secret of immortality from the guru Shukracharya, is killed and digested by demons, his rebirth unfolds like a scene from a genetic engineering playbook. Shukracharya doesn't just magically revive him, he reconstructs Kacha from within his own body using the knowledge they shared and literally regurgitates him back to life. Strip away the mythological veneer, and this mirrors modern synthetic biology's most cutting-edge experiments, encoding information into DNA for storage and retrieval. Think about it. Scientists today treat DNA like nature's hard drive, embedding digital data, from text to images into genetic sequences. In 2017, researchers at Harvard successfully encoded a movie into bacterial DNA, which was later retrieved and played back. Kacha's story operates on the same principle. Shukracharya's body becomes the storage medium, preserving Kacha's essence, his memories, knowledge, even his identity, much like DNA preserves genetic instructions. The guru's act of releasing Kacha parallels how we extract stored data from biological systems, reassembling it into its original form. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. The text specifies that Kacha retained everything he'd learned while inside Shukracharya, including the secret of reviving the dead. This isn't just metaphorical, it aligns with how synthetic biologists engineer cells to retain and pass on artificial genetic instructions. When scientists create modified bacteria that produce insulin, for example, those cells don't just manufacture the protein once. They remember the blueprint indefinitely, passing it to future generations. Kacha's uninterrupted knowledge transfer suggests a similar mechanism where biological memory persists through reconstruction. The demon's repeated attempts to destroy Kacha add another layer. Each time they kill him, Shukracharya brings him back, refining the process until it's foolproof. This mirrors iterative bioengineering where failed experiments lead to improved designs. Modern labs routinely use this trial and error approach. Think of CRISPR experiments where scientists adjust gene edits until achieving the desired trait. The Mahabharata frames these cycles as a battle between gods and demons, but the underlying narrative is one of persistence and optimization, hallmarks of any scientific endeavor. What's most striking, though, is the ethical subtext. Devayani's heartbreak when Kacha leaves after she helps save him echoes contemporary debates over the moral limits of bioengineering. The story doesn't shy away from the cost of manipulating life. It shows both the power and the consequences. Today, as we stand on the brink of extinction and human genome editing, Kacha's tale feels less like fantasy and more like a cautionary allegory. It asks the same questions we're grappling with now. Just because we can reconstruct life, should we? And what obligations come with that knowledge? The Mahabharata never explicitly calls this science, but the parallels are too precise to dismiss. From DNA day to storage to cellular memory and iterative design, Kacha's resurrection reads like an ancient blueprint for concepts we've only recently begun to master. Whether intentional or not, the story encodes a truth about life's malleability, one that resonates across millennia, reminding us that the line between myth and molecular biology might be thinner than we think. Gandhari's story in the Mahabharata takes a shocking turn when, after 2 years of pregnancy, she gives birth not to a child, but to a lifeless lump of flesh. This isn't just a grotesque twist in an epic, it's a startling allegory for how trauma and stress can rewrite biology. Before the sage Vyasa intervenes to divide the mass into 100 sons, the text lingers on Gandhari's emotional state, her despair, her jealousy toward Kunti's fertility, and the crushing pressure of her vow to blindfold herself in solidarity with her blind husband. These aren't incidental details, they're clues pointing to what modern science calls environmental epigenetics, the study of how external stressors can alter gene expression without changing the DNA itself. Today, we know maternal stress during pregnancy can trigger chemical tags on DNA, silencing or activating genes in ways that shape fetal development. Studies show elevated cortisol in expectant mothers correlates with higher risks of preterm birth, low birth weight, even congenital abnormalities, effects eerily mirrored in Gandhari's deformed, delayed delivery. Her lump of flesh, it could symbolize a pregnancy disrupted at the cellular level, where stress hormones like cortisol cross the placental barrier, interfering with normal embryogenesis. The Mahabharata even specifies that Gandhari's distress peaked in her second trimester, a critical window when epigenetic changes can most profoundly impact organ formation. But the parallels go deeper. Vyasa's solution, slicing the mass into 100 equal parts, resembles modern stem cell research, where scientists manipulate undifferentiated tissue into viable organisms. The text describes him placing each fragment in a jar of ghee, a substance rich in lipids that could metaphorically represent the nutrient-rich culture media used in cloning. And here's the kicker: the Kauravas born from this process are described as both physically robust yet morally flawed, a duality consistent with epigenetic theory. Research on Holocaust survivors' descendants, for example, reveals inherited stress markers linked to anxiety disorders, proof that trauma's fingerprints can linger across generations without a single mutation. What's most haunting is how the Mahabharata frames this event not as divine punishment but as a biological consequence. Gandhari isn't cursed by gods. Her own psychological turmoil manifests physically, twisting her pregnancy into something unrecognizable. It's a narrative that aligns uncomfortably with recent findings on how maternal mental health shapes offspring resilience. When Gandhari later watches her sons perish in war, the cycle completes her epigenetic legacy, born from stress, culminates in destruction. The story forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Our emotions don't just live in our minds, they etch themselves into our biology, and sometimes into the biology of those we create. Whether the ancients understood epigenetics as we do is beside the point. They observed its effects and encoded that knowledge in a myth so visceral, we're still unraveling its implications millennia later. Shukracharya's Amrita Sanjivani isn't just a mythical power, it's a biological revolution disguised as divine boon. The Puranas describe how this demon guru could reverse death itself, bringing slain warriors back to life with a single incantation. At first glance, it sounds like pure fantasy, but break it down, and you'll find eerie echoes of modern science's most audacious goal: halting, even reversing, programmed cell death. Apoptosis, the process by which cells self-destruct, is nature's way of pruning damaged or unnecessary tissue. But what if you could flip that switch back on? That's exactly what researchers are attempting with gene editing tools like CRISPR-Cas9, splicing in sequences that reactivate dormant cellular repair mechanisms. Shukracharya's incantations might as well be ancient code for these molecular commands. Consider the parallels. Modern experiments have already restored limited function to pig brains hours after death by flushing them with synthetic fluids, a process startlingly similar to how the Puranas depict Shukracharya anointing corpses with herbs and mantras. Then there's the story of Katja, who learns the Amrita Sanjivani secret after being reborn from Shukracharya's own body. This mirrors cutting-edge research into mitochondrial transfer, where cellular memory is preserved and transferred between organisms. The texts even describe the resurrected as retaining their memories and skills, just as edited cells maintain their original programming despite genetic intervention. But the most provocative detail lies in the limitations of Amrita Sanjivani. The power couldn't revive those whose bodies were completely destroyed, only those with intact tissues. This aligns perfectly with today's understanding that cellular repair requires some surviving framework to rebuild upon. Scientists can't resurrect ash, they need viable DNA or at least partial cellular structures to manipulate. The ancient texts frame this as a divine rule, but it's also a biological one. What's truly unsettling is how the Mahabharata treats this power not as unalloyed good, but as a destabilizing force. Every time Shukracharya revives a demon, it sparks ethical chaos, forcing the gods to seek new countermeasures. Sound familiar? It's the same debate raging around CRISPR today. Just because we can edit life, should we? The ancients seem to have grasped a truth we're still wrestling with. Tampering with death's boundaries doesn't just define nature, it redefines war, justice, and the very meaning of mortality. So was Amrita Sanjivani magic or a metaphor for lost biotechnology? The texts describe it as a vidya, a science passed down through rigorous training, not prayer. Its mechanisms, recorded in meticulous detail, read less like spells and more like lab protocols. Whether literal or allegorical, these stories force us to confront an unnerving possibility that the line between resurrection and genetic engineering might not be as clear as we think. And that raises a question far more profound than whether it was real. If our ancestors imagined such feats millennia ago, what might we achieve tomorrow? The legend of Parshuram, the immortal warrior sage, isn't just a tale of divine blessing, it's a biological riddle waiting to be decoded. Unlike other immortals in Hindu lore, his longevity isn't framed as magic but as a perpetual state of prime vitality, free from aging's decay. Modern science might call this telomere stabilization, where the protective caps on our DNA, the very clocks that count down cellular lifespan, are preserved or extended. Research today shows that telomeres shorten with each cell division, eventually triggering aging and dysfunction. But Parshuram's eternal youth suggests something remarkable, a disruption of this process, mirroring cutting-edge experiments with telomerase activation and gene therapies designed to halt biological time. Consider the parallels. Telomerase, the enzyme that rebuilds telomeres, is naturally abundant in stem cells and certain regenerative tissues, but declines with age. Scientists now explore boosting it artificially to combat aging-related diseases. Parshuram's condition aligns uncannily with this approach. His body seemingly defies the Hayflick limit, the point at which cells stop dividing due to telomere depletion. Even more telling, the Agni Purana describes his rejuvenation rituals involving specific herbs and austerities, a regimen that echoes modern studies on compounds like astragalus root or TA65, which have shown promise in activating telomerase. But Parshuram's immortality isn't passive. Texts depict him engaging in relentless physical and mental discipline, a factor modern research confirms as critical to telomere maintenance. Studies link meditation, caloric restriction, and intense exercise to longer telomeres, suggesting lifestyle can biologically pause aging. The Bhagavata Purana even notes Parshuram's mastery of pranayama, breath control techniques now associated with reduced oxidative stress, another key factor in telomere erosion. The implications stretch beyond longevity. Parshuram's enduring strength, his ability to wield his axe with undiminished power across millennia, parallels research on myostatin inhibition, where blocking certain proteins preserves muscle integrity in aging subjects. His immunity to disease mirrors the goal of senolytic therapies, which target zombie cells that drive inflammation and degeneration. Even his emotional resilience hints at epigenetics. Trauma accelerates telomere shortening, yet Parshuram remains unshaken by centuries of warfare, his biology seemingly insulated from stress's corrosive effects. What's most provocative is how the texts frame his condition. Parshuram's immortality isn't a gift but a curse, a burden forcing him to witness endless cycles of destruction. This mirrors the double-edged sword of telomere manipulation. While extending lifespan, unchecked cellular division risks cancer, a trade-off science grapples with today. The ancients, it seems, understood immortality's paradox long before lab mice outlived their natural lifespans, only to succumb to unforeseen consequences. So was Parshuram's unending life a metaphor or a preserved memory of biological mastery? The details, his rituals, his physical state, even the ethical weight of his existence align too precisely with modern anti-aging research to dismiss as fantasy. Whether symbolic or scientific, his story challenges us to reconsider how deeply the sages might have understood life's most intimate mechanisms, encoded not in textbooks but in myths waiting for science to catch up. Krishna's ability to manifest in countless forms simultaneously isn't just divine spectacle, it's a phenomenon that eerily mirrors the most perplexing principles of quantum physics. In the Bhagavata Purana, he dances with every gopi in Vrindavan at once, each experiencing him as wholly present beside her. This isn't mere illusion, the text describes it as a simultaneous, tangible reality. Modern quantum entanglement offers a startling parallel. Particles linked across vast distances instantaneously mirror each other's states, defying classical laws of space and time. Krishna's multiplicity operates with the same disregard for conventional limits, suggesting a universe where consciousness, not just matter, can exist in superimposed states. But the parallels go deeper than entanglement. Holographic theory posits that every part of a system encodes the whole, like a fragment of a hologram retaining the full image. Krishna's manifestations align uncannily with this idea. Each of his forms isn't a partial copy but a complete, independent expression of his essence. Even his childhood exploits hint at this. When his mother Yashoda peers into his mouth, she sees the entire cosmos, a vignette that mirrors how holographic DNA theory suggests our cells contain blueprints of the entire organism. Scientists now explore how DNA might function as a quantum hologram, storing and transmitting information non-locally. Krishna's simultaneous presence in infinite places could be mythology's intuitive grasp of this principle, long before labs confirmed quantum weirdness. What's most provocative is how Krishna's multiplicities interact. The gopis don't experience him as fragmented or diluted. Each encounters him fully engaged, emotionally present. This mirrors quantum coherence, where particles maintain unified behavior despite separation. Modern cloning experiments struggle with this. Creating copies inevitably degrades quality, like how photocopies lose resolution. Yet Krishna's manifestations defy this entropy, suggesting an ancient understanding of perfect biological or energetic replication. The Vishnu Purana even describes his forms as self-referential, adapting contextually like quantum particles that change behavior when observed. The implications stretch beyond physics. Krishna's simultaneous appearances challenge linear causality, much like quantum retrocausality, where effects can precede causes. His playful evasion of capture by demons appearing everywhere and nowhere echoes quantum superposition, where particles exist in multiple states until measured. Even his flute, whose notes are said to permeate all creation, parallels quantum field theory's vibration-based model of reality. So was Krishna's multiplicity mere myth or an encoded grasp of multidimensional existence? The texts frame it as yogamaya, the power of consciousness to transcend material constraints. Today, we'd call it quantum biology or non-local phenomena. Whether through divine insight or lost science, These stories resonate with truths we're only now uncovering, hinting that the gap between ancient wisdom and cutting-edge physics might be narrower than we ever imagined. The myth of the churning of the ocean hides a chilling secret: halahala, the deadliest poison ever conceived, a substance so toxic it threatened to unravel creation itself. As the Devas and Asuras churned the cosmic ocean, halahala emerged, its venomous fumes capable of corrupting life at its most fundamental level. But here's where the story takes a turn that echoes modern science with uncanny precision. Shiva, the destroyer and transformer, doesn't obliterate the poison. Instead, he contains it, neutralizing its lethality by holding it in his throat. This act isn't just symbolic, it mirrors the exact mechanism of CRISPR gene editing, where harmful genetic sequences are precisely targeted and silenced without disrupting the surrounding DNA. Think of halahala as a rogue gene, a mutation that could spiral out of control, poisoning cellular function. Shiva's intervention, his ability to isolate and nullify the toxin, parallels how CRISPR molecular scissors snip away dangerous mutations while leaving healthy code intact. The poison's all-consuming nature even aligns with how certain genetic disorders, like Huntington's disease, propagate irreparable damage if left unchecked. But Shiva's solution isn't destruction, it's precision control, turning the toxin inert by locking it away in his throat, much like how modern therapies silence faulty genes without erasing them entirely. The allegory deepens when you examine the aftermath. Shiva's throat turns blue from the poison's presence, earning him the name Neelkanth, or the blue-throated one. This isn't just a colorful detail, it's a biological metaphor. The blue hue represents a visible marker of neutralized threat, akin to how scientists use fluorescent tags to confirm successful gene edits. The poison remains, but its danger is contained, a living testament to the balance between harm and healing. Even the method of halahala's release holds scientific weight. The poison didn't emerge randomly. It surfaced from the collective churning of opposing forces, Devas and Asuras pulling in harmony. This mirrors how genetic mutations often arise from environmental stressors or conflicts within cellular processes. The myth suggests that destruction and creation are two sides of the same coin, a concept modern genetics confirms every time a mutation leads to disease or unexpectedly to evolution. What makes this story truly remarkable is its ethical dimension. Shiva doesn't destroy halahala because he recognizes its dual potential. In controlled form, the poison becomes part of his divine essence, a reminder that even the most dangerous elements can be harnessed. Modern medicine reflects this wisdom. Researchers now explore how bad genes, when properly regulated, might hold keys to resilience or adaptation. The ancients may have framed this as divine balance, but the underlying truth resonates with today's debates over genetic modifications, risks, and rewards. So was halahala just a mythical toxin, or could it encode an ancient understanding of genetic corruption and repair? The parallels are too deliberate to ignore. From targeted neutralization to visible markers of control, the story reads like a proto-scientific exploration of gene editing's core principles. It challenges us to see these myths not as mere tales, but as conceptual blueprints, ones that might still hold lessons for our own quest to master life's building blocks. Jambavan's extraordinary lifespan in the Ramayana, spanning multiple cosmic ages, isn't just mythological exaggeration. It's a biological enigma that finds startling parallels in modern genetic research on longevity. This bear king, who witnesses epochs from Lord Rama's era to Krishna's, is described not as immortal but as aging at an imperceptibly slow rate, a trait now associated with super-ager genes like FOXO3. Scientists studying centenarians have pinpointed this very gene as a key regulator of cellular repair and stress resistance, effectively putting the brakes on aging. But Jambavan's case goes further. His vitality persists not just for decades but millennia. suggesting genetic mutations far beyond what we observe in humans today. Consider the parallels. FOXO3 variants in humans are linked to reduced incidence of age-related diseases, from cancer to neurodegeneration. Jambavan's portrayal echoes this. He remains physically formidable and mentally sharp across ages, advising heroes and battling demons with undiminished prowess. Even more telling, the texts emphasize his role as a Chiranjeevi, a being destined to live until the end of the current cosmic cycle. This isn't passive longevity, it's programmed resilience, mirroring how FOXO3 activates pathways that detoxify cells and recycle damaged components, a process called autophagy. Modern labs artificially stimulate this mechanism with compounds like rapamycin, but Jambavan seems to possess it naturally. The clues deepen when examining his hybrid nature. As a bare humanoid, Jambavan's biology might have incorporated animal longevity traits. Certain species, like the bowhead whale or naked mole rat, exhibit negligible senescence, aging without functional decline. Their secret, mutations in genes like ERK1, which enhance DNA repair. The Ramayana hints at similar adaptations, noting Jambavan's immunity to environmental extremes and physical trauma, hallmarks of creatures with robust cellular maintenance systems. His hibernation-like periods of inactivity could even mirror metabolic slowdown strategies used by long-lived animals to reduce oxidative stress. What's most provocative isn't just Jambavan's lifespan, but how the texts frame it. His longevity isn't accidental, it's repeatedly tied to his role as a cosmic witness, implying evolutionary purpose. This aligns with emerging theories that aging isn't inevitable but a malleable trait shaped by selection. Researchers now explore manipulating genes like SIRT6, which extends lifespan in mice, to mimic natural mutations found in long-lived species. Jambavan's narrative seems to prefigure this idea, presenting extended lifespan as an integrated feature rather than an anomaly. The implications stretch beyond biology. Jambavan's enduring presence allows him to serve as a living bridge between divine eras, offering continuity in a changing world. Modern science pursues similar goals through cryonics or epigenetic reprogramming, seeking to preserve knowledge and capability across generations. Whether myth or encoded science, Jambavan's story challenges us to rethink longevity not as a quest for endless years, but as a harmonization of biology with purpose, an idea that's as revolutionary now as it must have seemed millennia ago. Rishi Agastya's encounter with the demon brothers Ilvala and Vatapi isn't just a victory of wisdom over brute force, it's a masterclass in biological manipulation that defies mythological explanation. The story, recounted in the Mahabharata, describes how Ilvala would transform his brother Vatapi into a goat, serve him as food to unsuspecting sages, then summon him back to life, causing the consumed flesh to tear the victims apart from within. But when Agastya is targeted, he does something extraordinary. He digests Vatapi completely, preventing his resurrection. At first glance, this seems like divine intervention, but the specifics hint at something far more scientific. An understanding of cellular breakdown so precise, it mirrors modern targeted apoptosis or RNA interference. Let's break it down. Apoptosis, or programmed cell death, is the body's way of eliminating unwanted or dangerous cells without causing inflammation. It's a tightly controlled process, often triggered by specific biochemical signals. Agastya's act of digesting Vatapi suggests he didn't just absorb the demon's flesh, he neutralized its regenerative capacity at the molecular level. Today, scientists use RNA interference to silence genes responsible for abnormal growth, like those that allow cancer cells to proliferate. By introducing small RNA strands, they disrupt the genetic instructions that sustain harmful tissue. Agastya's method aligns eerily with this. He doesn't just eat Vatapi, he dismantles the very mechanism that allows his reassembly. The parallels grow even more compelling when you examine the aftermath. After consuming Vatapi, Agastya doesn't suffer any ill effects. The demon's cells are fully deactivated, not just inert. This mirrors how modern gene therapies aim not just to suppress harmful DNA but to render it permanently inactive. The story even hints at Agastya's technique being replicable. Later texts describe him teaching others to counter similar threats, much like how scientific knowledge is shared and standardized. What's truly provocative is how the narrative frames this power. Agastya doesn't rely on weapons or brute strength. He uses a precise, almost clinical method to dismantle Vatapi's biology. The texts describe his act as a vidya, a science requiring knowledge of the body's inner workings. This distinction is critical. Unlike magical feats attributed to gods, Agastya's approach is methodical, even pedagogical, suggesting an ancient grasp of cellular mechanics that wouldn't be out of place in a modern lab. So was Agastya's feat mere myth, or could it encode a lost understanding of genetic silencing? The story's specificity, the focus on digestion as a targeted process, the irreversible neutralization of regenerative ability, points to something deeper than allegory. In a world where we're just beginning to harness RNA to edit life's code, this ancient tale feels less like fantasy and more like a fragmented blueprint, waiting for science to decode its full significance. The Matsya Purana's account of the Great Flood isn't just a tale of divine intervention, it's a meticulous blueprint for preserving life itself. When the fish god Vishnu, in his Matsya avatar, warns the sage Manu of the coming deluge, his instructions go beyond building an ark. He commands Manu to gather not just animals but the seeds of every plant, the essence of every species, storing them in a massive vessel to survive the cataclysm. This isn't just mythic foresight, it's a prescient understanding of genetic conservation, mirroring modern efforts like Norway's Svalbard Global Seed Vault, where millions of seed samples are stored deep in Arctic permafrost to safeguard biodiversity against disaster. Look closer at the parallels. The Svalbard Vault, often called the Doomsday Vault, is designed to withstand earthquakes, nuclear war, and rising sea levels, a modern ark for the age of climate change. Matsya's directive to Manu follows the same logic: protect life's building blocks from existential threats, ensuring survival and regeneration. The Purana even details how the seeds are to be stored protected from moisture and decay, much like how Svalbard's seeds are sealed in aluminum packets at -18°C. Both narratives recognize that preserving species isn't just about saving individuals. It's about safeguarding the genetic diversity that allows ecosystems to rebuild. But the Matsya Purana goes a step further. It describes Vishnu ensuring the survival of not just plants and animals, but also the Vedas, humanity's accumulated knowledge. This mirrors how Svalbard's vaults now include digital backups of agricultural data alongside physical seeds. The ancients grasped what modern science confirms: biodiversity and cultural memory are intertwined. Lose one and the other falters. The flood myth even hints at selective preservation, with Matsya advising Manu to prioritize species critical for food and medicine, a principle mirrored in today's seed banks, where crop varieties resistant to drought or disease are prioritized. What's most striking is the timescale. The Purana frames this preservation as cyclical, with each flood necessitating a new ark. Svalbard's designers account for the same inevitability, building for a future where climate shifts might require reseeding the planet. The vault's location, remote, inhospitable, echoes Matsya's choice of a mountaintop for Manu's vessel, high above the rising waters. Both solutions reflect a chilling pragmatism. Disasters will come, and the only way to outlast them is to plan for the unthinkable. So was the Matsya Purana's flood myth prophecy or preserved wisdom. The details, the focus on genetic diversity, the methods of storage, even the inclusion of knowledge, suggest more than coincidence. Whether through divine insight or hard-won experience, the ancients encoded a truth we're still grappling with. Survival isn't just about enduring the storm. It's about ensuring life can begin again when the waters recede. And in that, their vision and ours are eerily aligned. The Yakshas and Rakshasas of Hindu lore aren't just supernatural beings. They read like case studies in genetic experimentation gone awry. Yakshas, described as radiant, energy-wielding entities, defy conventional biology. Ancient texts depict them as neither fully corporeal nor purely spiritual, existing in a state that modern science might call bioluminescent or plasma-based life. Their ability to manipulate prana life force parallels research into bioelectricity, where organisms like electric eels or even human neurons harness energy in ways we're only beginning to understand. But here's what's provocative. The Vishnu Purana specifies that Yakshas emerged from the cosmic churning, a process symbolizing the deliberate mixing of elements. Could this be metaphorical language for genetic recombination, where energy-conducting traits were spliced into living forms? Rakshasas, on the other hand, take the concept of genetic alteration even further. These shape-shifting beings aren't just mythic monsters. Their described abilities mirror cutting-edge experiments in transgenic biology. The Mahabharata recounts how Rakshasas could alter their physical forms at will, mimicking humans or animals with terrifying precision. Today, scientists engineer chimeric organisms by blending genes across species, creating mice with human immune systems or pigs with humanized kidneys. The Rakshasas' polymorphic traits align unsettlingly with this research, particularly CRISPR potential to activate dormant junk DNA that might unlock latent adaptive capabilities. The differences between Yakshas and Rakshasas hint at divergent experimental paths. Yakshas exhibit stable, harmonious energy integration traits that might symbolize successful genetic augmentation. Rakshasas, however, embody instability. Their shapeshifting often accompanies rage or hunger, suggesting flawed gene splicing that triggered volatile mutations. This dichotomy mirrors modern challenges in gene therapy, where some edits yield breakthrough cures while others cause uncontrolled side effects like cancer or autoimmune reactions. Even the Rakshasas' vulnerability to certain metals like silver in some tales echoes how engineered organisms today can be designed with targeted weaknesses, a fail-safe against unintended consequences. But the most compelling evidence lies in their origins. Yakshas are said to spring from the god Kubera's domain, associated with wealth and natural abundance, a possible metaphor for optimized biological resources. Rakshasas, conversely, emerge from Pulastia's lineage, a sage linked to austerity and extremes, hinting at experimental overreach. The Rigveda even describes Rakshasas as those who disrupt sacrifice, a phrase that takes on new meaning when viewed through a genetic lens. Could sacrifice represent the natural order and Rakshasas its engineered disruptions? What if these weren't just stories but fragmented records of ancient bioengineering? The Yaksha's energy-based existence suggests mastery over mitochondrial function or even artificial photosynthesis, while Rakshasas exemplify the risks of uncontrolled genetic plasticity. Whether symbolic or literal, these beings force us to confront a startling possibility. That genetic manipulation isn't a modern innovation, but an art lost to time, one whose triumphs and warnings were preserved not in lab notes, but in myths waiting to be decoded. Kunti's story in the Mahabharata shatters conventional notions of conception, presenting a reproductive process so precise it borders on scientific protocol. When she invokes the sun god Surya to conceive Karna, the text details a method far removed from natural coupling. A beam of light descends, envelops her, and withdraws, leaving her pregnant without physical contact. Strip away the divine imagery, and this mirrors modern artificial insemination techniques, where genetic material is transferred without intercourse. The parallels don't stop there. Kunti's ability to selectively summon different gods, Surya for Karna, Dharma for Yudhishthira, Vayu for Bhima, suggests a controlled, intentional process akin to gamete selection in advanced fertility treatments today. Consider the mechanics. Kunti's mantra acts as a biological trigger, summoning specific deities whose traits manifest in her children. Surya bestows Karna's golden radiance and invincibility. Dharma grants Yudhishthira's unwavering morality, and Vayu imbues Bhima with unmatched strength. This selective trait inheritance mirrors pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, where embryos are screened for desired characteristics before implantation. The text even hints at genetic optimization. Karna's near invulnerability, for instance, resembles engineered traits in synthetic biology, where organisms are modified for enhanced resilience. What's most striking is how the narrative frames these conceptions. Kunti doesn't passively receive divine favor. She actively initiates each pregnancy using precise invocations, much like how reproductive endocrinologists trigger ovulation with hormonal cues. The Mahabharata specifies that her mantras must be recited flawlessly, implying a protocol where timing and execution determine success. Even Karna's birth comes with a peculiar detail. His golden armor fused to his skin suggests congenital modifications, akin to how CRISPR edits can introduce novel biological features at the embryonic stage. But the story's deeper implications lie in its ethical quandaries. Kunti abandons Karna, fearing societal rejection, a dilemma echoing modern debates over designer babies and the stigma surrounding non-traditional conception. Her later use of this power to ensure her husband's lineage through Madri further complicates the narrative, blurring lines between divine will and reproductive agency. The text treats these events not as miracles but as a transferable science. Kunti shares the mantras with Madri, who conceives Nakula and Sahadeva through the Ashwini twins, demonstrating reproducibility. Was this ancient IVF cloaked in myth? The specifics targeted conception, trait selection, even the beam of light resembling laser-assisted fertilization are too resonant to dismiss. Whether symbolic or literal, Kunti's story challenges us to reconsider how early civilizations might have conceptualized, or even practiced, the deliberate engineering of life centuries before Petri dishes and microscopes. The churning of the ocean, or Samudra Manthan, isn't just a cosmic tug-of-war between gods and demons. It's a vivid allegory for the messy, unpredictable process of genetic recombination. Picture this: the serpent Vasuki coiled around Mount Mandara, pulled from both ends, churning the primordial waters until they yield treasures and terrors in equal measure. This isn't just mythic drama, it's a perfect metaphor for how genetic shuffling creates both breakthroughs and breakdowns in life's code. The nectar of immortality, Amrita, symbolizes the pinnacle of beneficial mutations, traits like disease resistance or longevity that propel species forward. But alongside it emerges Halahala, a poison so potent it threatens to unravel creation itself, mirroring the destructive potential of genetic errors, cancers, congenital disorders, or runaway mutations that destabilize ecosystems. Dive deeper and the parallels become even more striking. The participants in this celestial churn, Devas and Asuras, represent opposing forces of stability and chaos, much like the dual nature of DNA repair mechanisms. On one hand, enzymes like BRCA1 meticulously fix errors to preserve genetic integrity. On the other, environmental stressors or replication mistakes introduce volatility, just as the Asura's aggressive pulling risks destabilizing the mountain. The ocean's churning even mirrors meiosis, the cellular process where chromosomes cross over and recombine, creating diversity but also opening the door to harmful rearrangements. The treasures that surface, the Kamadhenu cow, the Apsaras, the divine physician Dhanvantari aren't random. They embody the tangible outcomes of successful genetic innovation, sustainable resources, aesthetic beauty, and healing wisdom. Yet the story's brilliance lies in its balance. For every Amrita, there's a Halahala. For every breakthrough June variant enhancing human cognition, there's a Tay-Sachs or Huntington's lurking in the shuffle. The myth doesn't shy away from this duality. It forces Shiva to intervene, containing the poison without destroying it, just as modern gene editing seeks to neutralize harmful mutations while preserving beneficial diversity. Even the resolution carries scientific weight. The moon, plucked from the ocean's depths, is marked by Halahala's residue, a celestial reminder that genetic progress always bears scars. What makes this allegory profound is its timelessness. Today, as CRISPR and synthetic biology allow us to churn genomes with unprecedented precision, we face the same ethical dilemmas as the Devas and Asuras. How much volatility is too much? When does innovation become hubris? The ancients encoded these questions in a cosmic parable, one that whispers across millennia. Genetic diversity is both our greatest strength and our most volatile gamble. The ocean's churn never stops. It simply asks us to navigate its currents with wisdom equal to our ambition. Centuries after these ancient texts were written, modern science is just beginning to catch up, not with mythology, but with what appears to be a forgotten biological playbook. Take CRISPR, the revolutionary gene editing tool that acts like molecular scissors, snipping and replacing DNA sequences with surgical precision. This breakthrough, celebrated as a 21st century marvel, mirrors the precision of Shiva neutralizing Halahala poison targeting destruction while preserving life, or how Agastya dismantled Vatapi's regenerative code at the molecular level. Scientists today manipulate genes to cure diseases, enhance crops, and even resurrect extinct species, yet Hindu scriptures described similar feats millennia ago. The difference: where we see lab-coated researchers, they envisioned sages chanting mantras. The tools may have changed, but the underlying principles rewriting life's blueprint remain eerily consistent. Then there's synthetic biology, where scientists engineer entirely new organisms by stitching together custom DNA sequences. In 2010, researchers at the J. Craig Venter Institute created the first self-replicating synthetic bacterial cell, nicknamed Synthia. This watershed moment, building life from scratch, echoes the birth of Lord Ganesha, sculpted from clay and animated with divine energy. Both narratives hinge on the same radical premise: life isn't just discovered, it's designed. Even the methods align. Modern labs use nucleotide assembly lines to construct genetic code, while ancient texts describe meticulous rituals combining herbs, mantras, and elemental forces. The language differs, but the vision and alchemy of biology transcends time. Perhaps most striking are recent advances in artificial wombs and ectogenesis, where embryos develop outside the human body. In 2017, researchers at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia successfully gestated lamb fetuses in biobags, fluid-filled environments mimicking the womb. Fast forward to 2023, and teams in Israel grew mouse embryos in artificial uteruses for half their gestation. These experiments read like modern retellings of the Kritikas nurturing Kartikya's embryo in jars of ghee, or the Kauravas gestating in divided vessels. The ancient accounts even hint at challenges we're just now confronting: the need for precise temperature control, nutrient balance, and protection from contamination, details too specific to dismiss as poetic fancy. But the most provocative parallel lies in quantum biology, a field exploring how subatomic phenomena influence living systems. Studies now show that photosynthesis relies on quantum coherence, where particles exist in multiple states simultaneously to optimize energy transfer. Birds navigate using quantum entanglement, sensing Earth's magnetic field through paired electrons. These discoveries blur the line between biology and physics in ways that resonate with Krishna's simultaneous manifestations, each a discrete yet entangled expression of consciousness. The Rigveda's description of reality as indivisible wholeness in motion suddenly sounds less like philosophy and more like quantum field theory articulated in Sanskrit. So are we innovating or simply rediscovering? The evidence mounts with each breakthrough. When labs edit genes to make crops drought-resistant, they echo the Ashwini Kumaras' power to revitalize withered plants. When bioengineers grow human organs in pigs, they mirror the Naga's hybrid physiology. Even attempts to reverse aging through telomerase activation feel like glimpses into Parshuram's eternal vitality. The patterns are too consistent, too precise to dismiss as coincidence. What ancient sages called divine science, we now term biotechnology, different languages describing the same profound truth. Life is a code waiting to be read, rewritten, and understood. This convergence raises a tantalizing possibility that these texts aren't mere myths but encrypted legacies of a scientific tradition lost to time. Whether through intuition, observation, or hands-on experimentation, the ancients seem to have grasped life's malleability long before microscopes revealed the double helix. As we stand on the brink of rewriting our own genetic destiny, their stories serve as both inspiration and caution. The power to shape life carries profound responsibility. The deeper we delve into our DNA, the more these ancient narratives shift from fantasy to something far more compelling, a mirror reflecting our past and perhaps our future. Of course, the most immediate objection to these parallels between Hindu texts and modern genetics is simple. Aren't these just myths, stories crafted to explain the unexplainable, dressed up with poetic imagination? It's a fair critique, one that scholars have debated for centuries. Take the ancient astronaut theory popularized by Erich von Däniken, which argues that advanced extraterrestrials visited early civilizations, sharing technology that seemed like magic. Proponents point to the precision in these texts as evidence of literal encounters with advanced beings. But there's another, perhaps more nuanced perspective. What if these stories aren't about aliens or forgotten super science, but about something far more profound? An intuitive, symbolic understanding of life's principles expressed through the language of their time. Consider how mythology functions. Cultures worldwide encode complex truths in allegory because metaphor transcends the limits of contemporary knowledge. The Norse world tree Yggdrasil isn't literally a tree holding up the universe, but a poetic representation of cosmic interconnectedness, a concept modern physics now quantifies as quantum entanglement. Similarly, Hindu sages might have observed patterns in nature, heredity, adaptation, even regeneration, and encoded these insights into narratives that could endure across generations. The Kauravas' cloning-like birth might symbolize the replication of traits in offspring or the dangers of genetic uniformity. Ganesha's elephant head could represent the fusion of wisdom and strength, not a surgical procedure. Yet even symbolic interpretations don't fully explain the technical specifics. The Mahabharata doesn't just say the Kauravas were born from one embryo, it details division, incubation, and ethical concerns, steps eerily aligned with somatic cell nuclear transfer. The Ashwini Kumaras' healing methods aren't vague miracles, they're described with procedural rigor down to herbal concoctions and timing. This level of granularity suggests more than metaphor. It hints at observed or even practiced techniques, later mythologized as divine intervention when the original knowledge faded. The divide between lost science and symbolic myth might be a false dichotomy. Ancient cultures didn't separate the empirical from the spiritual as we do today. A sage studying herbs might see their medicinal properties as both biological and divine. In this light, the texts could be neither pure fiction nor literal records, but a blend, observations of natural phenomena, fragments of experimental knowledge, and spiritual insights woven together. The Naga's hybrid forms might reflect real encounters with genetic anomalies like cyclopia in newborns interpreted through a mythological lens, or they could encode warnings about tampering with nature's boundaries, a theme as relevant today as ever. Skeptics also point to confirmation bias, the tendency to cherry-pick details that fit a modern framework while ignoring inconsistencies. true, not every element aligns neatly. The flying Vimanas, for instance, are often cited as ancient aircraft, yet their descriptions sometimes defy aerodynamics. But this doesn't negate the genetic parallels. It simply reminds us that ancient knowledge, like modern science, was a mix of breakthroughs, hypotheses, and misinterpretations. The Vedas describe the Earth as a sphere long before Greek astronomers, yet also speak of elephants supporting it, a reminder that pre-modern science blended observation with poetic cosmology. What's ultimately at stake isn't proving whether ancient Hindus had CRISPR labs, but recognizing the sophistication of their thought. These texts grapple with questions we're still asking. What is the essence of life? Can it be altered? What are the ethical limits? Whether through empirical study or intuitive revelation, they arrived at concepts modern science is now validating. That convergence between the symbolic and the tangible, the ancient and the cutting edge, is where the real mystery lies. It challenges us to expand our definition of science and consider whether some truths about life's malleability are so fundamental they've been rediscovered across millennia in vastly different languages. So where does this leave us? The parallels between ancient Hindu texts and modern genetic science are too numerous and too precise to dismiss as mere coincidence. From the Kauravas' cloned birth to Kartikeya's embryo transfer, from Ganesha's hybrid physiology to the Ashwini Kumaras' cellular regeneration, what our ancestors described as divine intervention increasingly resembles today's biotechnological frontier. The unsettling truth is this: either ancient civilizations possessed insights into life's building blocks that rival our own, or human imagination somehow conjured narratives that align perfectly with discoveries we wouldn't make for millennia. Both possibilities are equally staggering. This isn't about proving mythology right or reducing sacred texts to laboratory manuals. It's about recognizing that the boundary between science and storytelling might be far more porous than we've assumed. For centuries, scholars dismissed the Vedas' description of the sun as the center of the solar system as poetic metaphor until Copernicus proved it fact. The Puranas' accounts of submerged continents like Kumari Kandam were laughed at as fantasy until plate tectonics revealed lost landmasses beneath the Indian Ocean. History has shown us again and again, today's myth often becomes tomorrow's textbook. Now consider where genetic engineering is headed. Scientists are already experimenting with gene drives to rewrite entire ecosystems, synthetic wombs to grow mammals outside the body, and CRISPR therapies to reverse aging. These aren't sci-fi dreams, they're active research areas that would have sounded like divine magic just 50 years ago. If our ancestors did possess similar knowledge, even fragmentarily, its loss and rediscovery suggests a cyclical nature to scientific progress. Perhaps future breakthroughs, say epigenetic rejuvenation or quantum biological computing, are already waiting in plain sight, hidden within metaphors we've yet to decode. That's the real provocation here. These texts might hold more than spiritual wisdom. They could be time capsules of scientific intuition, preserving concepts too advanced for their era. When the Mahabharata warns of the Kauravas' unnatural origin leading to destruction, it mirrors modern ethical debates over germline editing. When the Rigveda describes consciousness pervading all matter, it anticipates quantum biology's explorations of mind-matter connections. The patterns aren't just similarities, they're invitations to look deeper. So as we stand on the brink of editing life itself, perhaps it's time to revisit these ancient narratives with fresh eyes. Not to mine them for technical blueprints, but to ask, what other insights about life's malleability have we overlooked? What if the next great genetic leap isn't just in a lab, but hidden in a verse we've recited for centuries without grasping its full meaning? The answers won't be found in literal interpretations or outright dismissals, but in the fertile space between, where myth and science converge to reveal truths about existence that transcend time. Now it's your turn. Do you think these parallels are meaningful or just imaginative coincidence? Have you encountered other ancient accounts that seem to predict modern science? Drop your thoughts below. Let's unravel this mystery together. Because if history teaches us anything, it's that the future often whispers in the language of the past.